Hello everybody, we should be getting started here in about a minute. Hey everybody, this is Marshall Anschutz. I am going to be presenting today on some emergency setup for getting a live stream for your church. I just wanted to, first off, everybody, say thank you for joining the stream. We're going to have a fun time for the next about an hour or so. I want to give a few tips and also answer any questions that you may have. There is chat if you're on YouTube. There is also a Facebook group that we're monitoring now. It's set up and you can get to it from our website from live.unwritten.media/corona. There is a button on there below the YouTube video that will take you to a Facebook group you can use to chat, to ask questions, and we're also going to post some of the resources that we talk about this week and over the next coming days as things unfold, as churches need to either do more live streams or we adjust to situations. We're going to make sure that you are equipped to be able to handle those things, no matter how large or small your church is. I want to thank everyone for joining, of course, but I also want to thank my wife and 2 kids who are 2 years old and my 6-year-old who are running around upstairs somewhere. I want to thank them for clearing out, giving me the space, and trying to not scream bloody murder like they love to do. They're a great bunch of kids, and I love working with them. They're the reason that I stopped volunteering every week in church, but they're the reason that I have a passion to make sure that the next generation is reached for Christ. And so anyways, that's why I engage. A little bit about myself: I have done church media for about 25 years now. I've done broadcast video streaming and virtual reality streaming as well. So those are some of my joys, is to work in this video area, to work with audio, new technologies. And even if you don't have much of the technology, I love to find ways to be able to use it to the fullest, to be able to do things maybe you didn't even realize you could do. Before we get too far into this, I wanted to give an example from the Bible for just a quick little mini message here almost. I was thinking this morning about how in the book of Joshua, there's 2 tribes on the other side of the Jordan River. Ephraim and Manasseh were over there, and they couldn't get to the temple because they were too far away because of the river, and they didn't have an easy way to get to Jerusalem. So they built another altar. Well, the rest of the Israelites got concerned that they were going to worship at that altar instead and replace the temple and not do what God commanded. But they told when they had come and said, okay, we're using this altar as a reminder, a pointer to the altar in Jerusalem, not as a replacement for it. And I think that's a perfect example of what we're trying to do here with live streams. We're trying to take the message that we get, the community that we have, and for those who can't get inside the church, who can't be inside a community or a body at that time directly and physically, they have the next best thing, which is a reminder, a pointer, something else that they can interact with that week or that day. So anyways, I just wanted to thank everyone for doing their part to reach out and to be those remote campuses, those remote altars, if you will, for the body of Christ. So there are several things that you can do to stream if you don't have any technology for doing live streams on a weekly basis. The first thing, of course, that you can do is you can take your phone, you can open up YouTube or Facebook, go live, and use your phone, set it up, and record the service that way. A couple pointers for that will help is Of course, knowing your audience. If you have maybe a really young generation audience, then setting your phone vertically might be fine for everyone watching that way. But for the most part, turning your phone sideways, finding a stand, whether it's a shelf, a book, something to hold it up in place so that it doesn't fall over. Ideally, you have a mic stand or something that can, hold it up. Don't forget, you can use gaff tape or duct tape to tape your phone to something. Not too much that it blocks the heat and makes it hot, but once you get started, you can always use something like that to hold your phone for a really quick live stream. If you're doing that though, one of the important things is audio. And so either have your phone close enough so that it's a closer shot like this, that you can actually be close to the person talking. The next best thing, of course, is if your phone still has an audio input jack, to run an output from the headphone jack of your mixer. Hopefully you have a cable that will get the microphone in to the input of the phone. You can double check that with either the voice recorder app or do a test record to see if the audio levels are fine, if they're clipping or if they're really quiet. But using something like that will get you a quick signal in to be able to do a live stream in a pinch. Honestly, the most important thing for people is going to be to hear the message. If they can't hear it, then they're not going to be able to engage much, even if it's a perfect video signal anyways. So being able to have a quality audio feed is probably where you should spend the majority of your time between now and Sunday or whenever you're doing your service. The important thing for a phone-based record would be to make sure that your phone is charged, to make sure that you have possibly turn the screen brightness down on your phone so that you can still see it, but that it doesn't heat up the phone, it doesn't drain the battery as fast. When it's streaming, it's using a lot of processing in the phone. It's also using possibly the cell phone network to do the stream. If you have a really good internet connection at your church, use Wi-Fi. Otherwise, turn it off and just let the cell phone network work. It's probably better than most Wi-Fi in churches anyways. Those type of things are going to give you the best possible experience, best battery life, and chances of the phone not overheating or crashing or draining the battery halfway through the service. I would plan on contingencies. So, excuse me, if you have two people who have the same kind of phone, then make sure that both of those phones are set up with the same account information to do the live stream, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. That way you're able to have a backup in case if one of the phones decides not to work. But the audio should work with the audio input jack if you have enough cables to test that and make it work properly. If you have a computer that can be used for streaming, whether this is your machine that does ProPresenter, whether it's your machine that maybe is somebody's extra laptop that's fairly new, you can use that with a piece of software called Open Broadcaster. That's what I have up on the screen with me also. The software itself is it's free, and it can do a broadcast mixer to combine multiple sources, to bring in the audio. You can use it with the audio input jack on your computer. You can also use it with, if you have a capture device for maybe video game streaming. That's probably something that maybe somebody's kids has a video game streaming that they do on Twitch or to somewhere else, to YouTube gaming. Go grab their device and use it to bring in the audio, use it to bring in a video signal from your ProPresenter machine or from a camera if you have a cable. I was actually going to, for this stream, use a DSLR camera and HDMI out from that into a capture device. But of course, I didn't have the right cables last night. So I wasn't able to do that and I had to improvise. So this is maybe one of the other solutions, is to take a laptop, set it up, and have it sitting there close enough that you can frame the shot and use the webcam. So Open Broadcaster can support that. And this Open Broadcaster software supports Facebook, it supports Twitch, and it supports YouTube. So those are all possible solutions you can use to stream the service. The software itself is able to be downloaded from a website here, OBS Studio. I'll put that up for you. The obsproject.com is the official website for it. The download is pretty small. They also have some plugins and stuff for other features that are found on their forums. It's a little confusing that it says support and you go to forums, but then that's a place to also download some extra features onto it if you have time to get those working. So I want to walk in through the software for a few minutes, just real quick to show a few of the features off. I'm actually going to delete everything out so that we can start with nothing. I had to actually set up 2 different machines to do this. If I deleted everything on our broadcast, y'all would not see a live stream right now. Okay, here we go. Remove this. Wrong buttons. And remove. Okay, so you have to have one scene in it. The way that Open Broadcaster works is you can add different sources into a scene, and then you can switch between these different scenes by using either the transition or the cut button. The fade for the transition, it defaults to about 1/3 of a second, which is probably fine. You can play with that if it doesn't feel good to you. You can add and remove different sources into your thing based on the little plus down at the bottom. And for everyone following along at home, there are 2 different modes here. There's studio mode and non-studio mode. So this is a standard mode I think it comes with by default that just shows your main broadcast. I would recommend you hit studio mode so you have preview on the left and program on the right. Same thing with your audio mixer. It's very configurable. You can switch out the layout whatever way is comfortable for you. So on the sources, we can add a media source if you want to play a video file, if you have anything that's not infringing on copyright. Maybe something that your church produced, a pre-roll video, it'll play that. There is also a video capture device, and you can give it a name, and then you can configure it. I've got several different ones connected to this machine. There is Blackmagic Web Presenter, which is a really cool device if you have one. If you don't and you need a device, I would recommend getting something from Blackmagic Design. We'll have a link in our discussion forum that we can send out later if you want to go buy some of their products. They're sold on B&H and on several other websites as well, but their stuff is all less than $1,000 to get started. But with their device, you want to go ahead and choose the custom resolution and select this highest one here, the 1280 by 720. It's the highest resolution their web presenter and their ATEM mini switcher support, but it's still good enough for a web broadcast. The same thing down here, your audio output mode. You want to capture, you can select capturing the audio. You can choose some of the different ones here. You may have to play with this to actually get the audio working. I always have to choose custom audio device and then choose the microphone device as it calls it. That enables the device, and it'll show up here in the audio mixer, except that sometimes things get stuck. I've found toggling studio mode sometimes works here to get it to show an actual device. So here I have a microphone connected, and you can see here we talk louder, it's going to peak and give you those red alerts. And you can adjust filters, we'll get to that later. But anyways, you have the video device, and here now we can transition to it. We can adjust any settings, and when we transition, it will apply that on the actual feed. So we're going to set up another scene here that is graphics. This is another thing that I would recommend that everyone sets up, even if you don't have a video source and you can only get audio to come into this machine using the microphone input on your computer. Add this. There's also a plugin from Videotech. Their website is NDI. TV, they have a plugin that will give you a whole bunch of different stuff. I don't know if you can see it on my desktop. There's a studio monitor, test patterns, virtual input. The virtual input will take one of your screens and stream it over the network to a plugin in Open Broadcaster. The test pattern one you can use for test patterns, but you can also use it for adding your graphics. And so I've added a few graphics by clicking this little plus. It brings up something where I can choose an image, and when I add it in, it gives me different slides. So when I do that, it gives me the ability to run graphics kind of like a Pro Presenter system would do. You can load up I would suggest a logo for your church. If you have some sort of logo graphic, I would suggest also maybe a graphic with, if you're doing songs, maybe the lyrics to the song. For the sermon, you could have at the very least the title of the sermon and the date, but I would also try to do maybe the sermon points if you have time. Create those in PowerPoint and just make some simple slides, make the graphics nice and large, the font's large, and then go into File, Save As, or Save a Copy, and in the drop down of file types, there's an option to say Save as JPEGs, and if you do that, it says Save One or Save All the Slides, and it will make a folder of slide graphics, the JPEGs, that you can then import into the NDI test pattern system. That will give you the ability to, even without any sort of interface from Pro Presenter, to be able to send the graphics over here. The other option is that if you install this NDI plugin on the Pro Presenter machine, and you install it on another machine or possibly the same machine to do your live stream, you can actually use Open Broadcaster to receive that through this NDI source as well. So let me show you how the NDI sources work. It is a plugin, and as I said, you get those on the support forums for Open Broadcaster. So the obsproject.com, there's support forums, and it's one of the top plugins right now on their list there. So you create a new NDI source, and maybe we call this graphics. And create new creates a new input to the system. If you have this and you're making multiple scenes, you want to do something like this picture in picture, but then make a different view that's full screen, you can then use the add existing and select it so that you don't have duplicates. Every one of these sources adds an additional load to your machine. So if you can reuse an existing one, then go ahead and do that. You have to give everything a unique name. But here I can go in and choose test pattern. You can see I also have my 2 graphics cards, my 2 monitors from this machine as well that I can choose. I choose the lowest bandwidth. If you have a gigabit network, the highest should work, but it's really going to put a strain on the network. So lowest bandwidth, set the sync to source timing, and check allow hardware acceleration if you have a graphics card in your machine, which I hope you do for streaming, is the best. If not, you can try the hardware acceleration. You may have to try it without that. And when you select that, it will then show up, and you can resize it, which should resize correctly into the window. If you have something that is too small, maybe doesn't fill the screen and you're having trouble with that, you can always make your graphics larger than real life and then position them like that. So that gives you the ability to zoom in or crop something if necessary. So here we're transitioning to some different scenes, and now we have it fade. Sometimes the graphics don't fade properly, but for a quick pinch, this will definitely work. So does anyone have any questions so far? I'd love to make sure that everyone is able to work. If you're missing equipment, obviously missing cables is something that we're going to need to be able to think of alternate solutions. The Open Broadcaster software has so many different features that it should have something that you need to be able to do a broadcast. One of the things that I want to mention here is that we need to find a service that we're going to stream on. There is YouTube, Twitch, Facebook Live. All of those support Open Broadcaster, and all of those can be used to go live without ads, or without at least any ads that are intrusive on the video. There's some other services like Ustream that do actually add ads into your video stream for free. And so I recommend steering clear of those. You don't want a beer commercial right at when you normally do, your offertory. So that's why I've been focusing on YouTube or possibly Facebook Live. For Facebook to go live, you have to go to your page in Facebook, your church's page, and there's a button to go live right below your status area. I have a picture of it here because they are changing the Facebook system. My Facebook shows a new way, so I don't want to confuse you. There is a button right here that says live video. Something like this. They always change the layout up. But that button will give you a link when you click on it, or it can give you a link to put into Open Broadcaster in the settings. To show you an example here on a version of Windows. This is actually a little bit older version of Open Broadcaster, but there is, under the streaming section, when you select Facebook Live, it'll have a place to type in that key. There is the show button if you want to make sure you're typing it in correctly that I'd recommend using. The same thing for YouTube. If you aren't doing YouTube streaming right now, I would recommend that you go to your YouTube account, whether it's your personal or whether it's if your church has one, and go into studio.youtube.com and request access to start live streaming. The live stream approval can take up to 24 hours, and for most of you, we're well within that window. So go ahead, request the live streaming. Hopefully it will be enabled quickly, but if not, then you may have to fall back on either Twitch or Facebook Live. One of the advantages of YouTube is that you are able to actually have a stream set up beforehand. For everyone who didn't tune in when the stream already started, you probably saw my countdown that said, 10 minutes till it starts, 3 minutes till it starts. That is actually done by YouTube in YouTube Studio. You type in the time that your service starts, and you can go live before then or after if you're really late. But ideally, you go live maybe 3 to 5 minutes beforehand, and then the stream will switch over, and everyone will start seeing that the live broadcast who's been waiting on that page. So it allows you to do a social share, to be able to get the word out and have everyone start, I hate to say making it go viral, but to be able to share the link out to everyone in the community. I see someone asking here, do you have to use Open Broadcaster? The reason why I suggest Open Broadcaster is because you can add the graphics and bring in the audio, but no, you can go live with your phone. If you just have a webcam, you can just go live straight in Facebook, but you're not going to have the things like the audio meters, like the ability to preview the feed and to record it locally as well. So there are two buttons here. There's Start Streaming and there's Start Recording. The Start Recording button will record it locally. The Start Streaming button will start pushing it into the cloud. YouTube allows you to preview your live stream. I was able, for instance, to do a audio check to make sure that the stream had, good audio sounding. I'm actually going to show you here the stream. I think you can see it, maybe picture in picture here, but you can see that the YouTube previewer has analytics. It has an area to end your stream. It has an area to modify your stream settings, and all of those things will be really useful when you're using a split system like this. When you use your phone or you just go live from the web interface, it's just going to be that. It's just the video playing, and you don't have any indication if the stream is working or not, unless if you can watch it from another device. A little bit less troubleshooting ability. I see some people talking in chat about CCLI, and that's a good point. So when you're doing your broadcast of your service, you don't have to do what you do every Sunday. If you don't pay currently for a CCLI license that also includes broadcast rights, and a default one does not, it's an extra fee that you pay to be able to stream your services or to broadcast. And that license allows you to play music live in your event and stream it on the internet. Stream it with YouTube or Twitch or Facebook Live. If your church is just using pre-recorded audio, if you play Hillsong or Bethel or something like that, and you're then broadcasting that on your feed, YouTube and Facebook and some of these other groups are going to actually ding your account. They're going to lock out your profile if you do it enough times, but they will start giving you demerits, which will keep your feed from being able to broadcast as well, or even revoke your ability to access your account at all. It's very important that if you're playing music that's pre-recorded, like a real something that's published on iTunes or Spotify or something, that you don't have that music broadcast at all. If you're doing something live, then with the CCLI license, you will be fine. If you don't have that, then I would suggest, maybe do something a cappella. Someone who, hopefully can sing well a cappella or with a guitar can do maybe just one song and then go into the message. If you have a large room and you also have an office, consider if everyone is remote, maybe if it's easier, just go into the office and broadcast it from in there. Especially if you're just using a phone or a laptop or something. Just sit at the table, have a discussion, look at the camera. Don't act like there's an audience of 100 people or 50 people or whatever like you normally do. Don't talk to an audience that doesn't exist, but actually just interact with the people one-on-one on the feed. It's okay, even here, like we're using chat, we're discussing things, to have that kind of discussion while you're in the service. So instead of a meet and greet time, you can use the chat to say hi to each other. Instead of having offertory time where you're passing the plate, you can put a link to your giving page on your website, whatever type of giving system you have, if you have one set up, and we'll talk about that hopefully here in a few minutes. But if you have any of those type of resources, put them in the chat, put them in the description of your video, or share them on the comments if you're using YouTube Live or Facebook Live. Those type of things will have the interaction that aren't the same as your church service, but it's still the same things. They still need to be able to give. They still need to be able to have some community with each other and have that relationship. One thing that I want to mention is for prayer at the end of the service, I would recommend, personally, it's not a technology thing, but I would recommend having an email address or some way, a phone number if you have people that can handle several people calling in, to be able to have the prayer requests not be public on YouTube, not be public on Facebook, and probably definitely not on Twitch, because you don't know who else is going to be able to watch these streams. You may actually pick up people either in your community or even halfway around the world who are watching this and may even just say something hurtful, oh, well, I hope your mother does die. You don't want that kind of stuff to be in there when someone's sharing that their mother is, getting cancer treatment. So bringing those prayer requests out to something like email, where it's a little bit more private, and then have volunteers look at that email and pray, or your church staff if you have someone available to do that. Pray, write out a prayer response and send it back. Of course, you can follow up or have phone calls throughout the week and still have that kind of communication. Yes, Easy Worship you can use with Open Broadcaster. Open Broadcaster has a way to receive one of the screens that you on your computer. It doesn't always work. I don't believe that they have this NDI plugin. I know ProPresenter does, but you should be able to capture like a secondary display and then bring it into Open Broadcaster. Let's look real quick. There is a window capture that will allow you to choose one of your windows or one of your different programs. it's not always perfect, but if you have the software up and running, then you should be able to grab that window, the presentation window, and bring it into your program. Let's see, we have some other things to go over here. We went over copyright. As far as people watching the stream, one thing that my family does every week is we actually go to church on Saturday, and then on Sunday morning, we watch our service live. We watch the rebroadcast or the live stream on Sunday morning with the family. So this is a really good model for people who are watching in their house. It's not necessarily to watch it on their phone or to watch it on a desktop computer, but if you're using YouTube, there's a button on there for both iPhone and Android, a little box that has kind of a RSS or Wi-Fi little curves on it, and that button will allow you to Chromecast. Most TVs have the ability to Chromecast up to them and use this. So if they're looking at your stream on YouTube or they're looking on Facebook Live, they hit that button, they can cast it to their TV in the room, and then everyone can watch. You get a little bit more of a feel like you're actually watching TV, of that larger screen experience, and it really helps for being able to listen better. They can also then use their phone to interact with the chat, or to be able to write an email prayer request or call in, or even just set their phone down so it doesn't drain the battery. So I would recommend possibly putting out some of those type of tips on Facebook for people to, or by email, to say, hey, listen, watch, here's if you know that a lot of your users use iPhones, then tell them, walk them through that process to say, hey, when you go to YouTube, here's where the button is, so that you can send it to your television, or the same like with Android. It looks basically the same in the app, but at least being familiar with it with your phone will help if someone's asking you a question before or during the stream, or maybe even for next week. The OBS software can capture any display on your machine. I see Tom is asking about that, if we can capture any display. The NDI software, the tools that you install, there's two pieces. There's the NDI plugin for Open Broadcaster, and then there's the NDI tools from NDI.tv that are the kind of official plugins. Install both of them, but the plugin, the NDI.tv plugins, can be installed on any machine in your network, and any of them that are all wired together by Ethernet can send video signals to each other using this program called Virtual Input. I would show you what it looks like, but it doesn't really have a view. Just when you run Virtual Input, it exposes all those screens on the network for someone to pull off in Open Broadcaster. Also, Skype has an option for this. I don't know how much time we have to discuss that, but if you need to bring together some people remotely, you can use Skype and actually turn on in settings. You go to calls, I believe, and then advanced, and there's an option to enable NDI output. And when you enable that and you make a call, every person who is calling in gets a unique VDI or NDI name input that you can receive from. I wasn't able to get that working good for a demo here, so I don't know how easy it is right now to make all the pieces work, but theoretically it's there. I know they do actually use that for broadcasts. When you look on Fox or CNN or something like that, and they're bringing someone in via Skype, they're actually using that NDI feature to bring it into their system. So the cost of streaming on YouTube is free. Google makes their money through ads and other things like that, and so they're able to supply streaming for free. Same thing with Facebook Live. Some of the other platforms you would need to pay for. I see you're asking about CCLI. CCLI licenses for churches do vary. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know their official pricing. They do change it. Different churches have different models, and I don't know how that pricing varies across the country or across the world. But if you go look on CCLI's website, then that would be a good place for that type of information. And I believe that I have their website here for you to look at. There you go. So the CCLI website is probably the place to discuss and look at broadcast licenses for music. And I don't have any pricing or even an estimate on what that would cost. So for this week, my recommendation would be to probably avoid anything that you think would violate the license. I would hate to say something like, oh, if your church is below 50 people, they're probably not going to sue you. Everyone is also changing data caps on bandwidth, things like that for the coronavirus. So, if you contact them and don't hear anything, then that's going to be up to you and praying about it. Regarding streaming, I'm actually getting an error right now that YouTube can't get enough data from my signal to maintain smooth streaming. So I hope y'all are able to still watch for one, but that's another thing that's a very real problem for a stream. My recommendations are try this today. Everyone is using bandwidth. You've got kids playing games, you've got people downloading updates, you've got people streaming video all over the place. So be hardwired into your router, check the connection, have a phone that can do hotspot. I would recommend Verizon or AT&T or whatever carrier is the most strong and reliable in your building, to have a phone like that with hotspot mode that you could connect to instead if that isn't working. Test that out, and you can set the bandwidth inside of Open Broadcaster by going to settings, and the output side shows you for streaming and for recording separately. So here I'm able to set up some of the configurations, but on the streaming side, I can adjust the bit rate. I have mine set to 2500 kilobits a second. If you're doing a broadcast with someone just standing here, maybe a few slides, you can go down to 1500 kilobits a second and you'll still have a fine feed. I would set the maximum maybe to double that, so 3000. I wouldn't go much higher than that, or your stream is gonna have some really weird peaks. But the average bit rate of somewhere between 1000 to 2500 for these type of broadcasts is going to be just fine. The presets here, if you have a NVIDIA graphics card in your machine, then I would use the NVIDIA encoder. It should have a H264 new. If it has that, then use that. Set the preset to quality or max quality, and then your profile to high will give you the best quality signal. If your computer is struggling or older, then I would go down to something like performance or max performance. The low latency options are not important. It's okay if you have a few more seconds of latency on your feed rather than having it start glitching. People aren't going to know how live it is. And even here with the max quality settings and the maximum quality and the longest latency on YouTube, we still only have about 15 or 20 seconds here of latency. So some of these options, I would actually open up your control panel or the task manager, and let's pull it over here. You can, if you double click on it, it will expand out or shrink back up to this size. But you can actually watch your GPU if you have a graphics card, and you'll see how much of it it's using. Same with your CPU. You want to make sure that you're not maxing that out, or you want to choose a more performance or max performance type of setting so you're not overloading your system. I mentioned giving. Several of the platforms that I know churches use are PushPay. Also, Planning Center has a module for giving. Those type of things sometimes take time to set up with your bank accounts. So that would be another thing that's important to set up now if you don't have it, to start getting those things ready for services. There's always options like Venmo or PayPal, especially if your church has that set up. Be very careful about giving to someone's personal account and then moving the money. That may cause financial audit team type of issues. So talk to whoever your accountant is. talk to someone who knows those things to make sure that you're doing it legally. But I would recommend giving the option of giving online, or at least give the church mailing address and say, if you want to give, here's the address. Don't worry about it. Don't be afraid or ashamed of asking for giving online. This is church this week for most people, is to watch it on the feed, to hopefully watch it on a television or on their phone, and to sit in their house. Giving is an act of worship. And so that's something that they can do to continue to engage, and of course to also help the ministry that the church is doing. So anyways, that's something not to be afraid of. If you can make a slide like I did here, and go in and transition to that slide, here's my information. It could just as well be a giving page. So anyways, I wanted to show you, before we're done here, that audio wise, a few things. So let's pull up our audio settings. For the microphone that you have, mine comes in through the Blackmagic, so it's on this video capture device. It'll either be that or the mic aux input. There's a little settings gear that you can click on, and there's properties, which will allow you to reconfigure any of those settings we looked at earlier. There's also filters, and I'm actually using one on this broadcast now, nothing crazy, but I am using a compressor, and that allows me to keep the levels from peaking. So what I would recommend is to, first off, if you can use your soundboard to send into the system, that you kind of set the levels, where on your meters where they are. But then I would go in with your threshold and pick that point that's right around the point that your audio is peaking out, and then set the ratio really high, and set a very small attack and release on that. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep the system from clipping when someone's listening to the feed. Then you can actually take the output gain and boost it up a little bit more to get it up where the audio level is in the yellow and almost into the red. So like right now I'm talking, if I don't have the ratio set, then when I talk loud, then it peaks out, and that's going to sound very bad. When I set that ratio up, now all of a sudden when I'm talking really loud, it's a lot less likely to get up to the red, and I can actually set the output gain. So now when I'm practically yelling into the microphone, you see here, it doesn't go up high at all. So that allows us to make the feed pleasant for people, but also the audio isn't so quiet that people have to turn up their TV, and then when someone bumps a microphone, everyone's blown out. The audio differences are much more noticeable in a house than in a worship center. So doing this will help you, and then mix it just like you would mix a broadcast. For those who haven't mixed a broadcast, that would be set everything where it's just, it's the same volume. When the music gets loud, don't necessarily make it louder. It needs to stay the same volume. It'll come through if you've got someone playing and they're really into the music, it's going to come across without the sound getting louder on the feed. There's lots of advanced features in there that you can look at, of course. I would recommend not using your computer's audio input if you can help it. They're usually noisy. But if you do use that, then play with whether it needs mic input or line input. Those things you can find in the Windows control panel under your audio settings. And then also on your inside of Open Broadcaster, you should be able to do at least some of those. For capture devices, I don't have on this machine a camera. Let's see if I can get to the options. You'll see in here, one of the capture devices is the NewTek NDI video. That's how you would bring it in. I also have an Elgato game capture device, which has an HDMI connector. So those type of things will work as well. If you're not seeing your video, deactivate and activate button. You can either toggle it, or maybe it's not active at the moment and you need to hit that to configure it. There's also a configure video button, which isn't working here, but if you have a webcam and you're doing your broadcast with that, click on Configure Video, and that will give you a Windows control panel of little sliders and numbers, and that is the gain and exposure on your camera. You can turn off all of the auto settings, especially like auto brightness, and that allows you to then maybe bring the brightness down a notch so that the feed looks good. I have mine on auto here, or I turned off auto on my webcam. You can see if I turn on the lights that it's not auto broadcast, it's not auto leveling. So that allows me to make sure that the feed looks good with the lighting that we have in the room, so that any little changes, if I, normally with auto white balance, if you put your hands up, it gets whiter, then it's going to dim the image. And if you step back, maybe something like that, then it's going to start to get brighter and look weird. So this can possibly help with a webcam type of experience, but it's also a good way to hold and control your colors. If anyone is not able to get on Facebook, you want to make sure that you're sharing this out another way. So that's a good point, David. Being able to watch your live stream, to message this out as many ways as you can. So send out an email to your congregation. If you have a phone system, being able to maybe do a phone blast to some of your congregation would help. Posting it on Facebook, encouraging people to share it by word of mouth, and then having, hopefully you do have a YouTube page for your church that people can go to, but whatever that place is that you're able to put your feed, make sure that you start messaging that out even tonight to let people know what they can expect tomorrow. Is there any questions that we have? I'd love to be able to answer those, to be able to help the one of the things that we have here is I have some slides of my contact information here. You can see me on Facebook. Also, we have the new Facebook group that you can join as well. Of course, asking questions there on YouTube chat. Thanks for all the questions. There's been some really good stuff on there. You can email me, team@unwritten.media. I'm going to try to look at those things. I don't know how many we'll have. I don't know how many I can answer, but I'll do my best. Of course, the page that hopefully you came through, the live.unwritten.media/corona, there is a email sign up at the bottom of that page that will let you sign up. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to send you a ton of stuff. But to be able to give some updates, if we're able to do another webcast, if we're able to send out some of these products or websites that we've been to, just so that you can get ready for doing a broadcast next week. I hope that you can have a better stream than you do this week, but I think that the things that we've been through today will hopefully help with doing at least some sort of duct tape solution, a starting point. Of course, not having a cable or something like that might prevent you from doing it, but hopefully by next week you'll have those and can have an even better broadcast. I see here a question about microphones. I have a Yeti microphone at my desk that I use for podcasts. That can work with Open Broadcaster. It can work with some other software as well. So using something like that, a studio microphone up close would be great. Most churches, whether you have a wireless lapel or a wired one, you can use those with the broadcast. Pretty much anything that you would use for service, even your wireless handheld mics, can be used as long as you can get that signal into your system. So if your wireless pack has the base station for it has an output that works with your computer, then by all means just send that in and use it. If you have a webcam that you're going with, I would recommend setting your laptop up on top of something, whether it's 2 rolls of gaff tape or something metal to conduct the heat away, ideally. Make sure you're not blocking any of the fans, and turn the brightness of your screen down some while you're doing the broadcast. That way your fans on your computer aren't running at full blast and they don't just hear a whirring sound instead of you teaching. Hopefully you're able to use another microphone, but I would say that, whether it's the air conditioner running or the fans on your computer, those things can be distractions that would be somewhere between annoying and make it really hard to hear on the broadcast. For capture devices, the Elgato type devices are sometimes in Best Buys. So if you have a Best Buy or maybe even a Walmart nearby that you're able to go to today, then you might be able to find a capture device. Anything probably that you can find in stores is going to be rated for gaming. So most of those gaming systems will work with this. And if all you can find is instructions with it to set up a Twitch account, that is acceptable. Twitch will work. And most of them work with YouTube as well. But if you're not able to get that going, I didn't show anything about Twitch, but you can always create a Twitch account and then stream your service on there as well. It does have chat, so you can interact with people with your congregation as well. But I think the options there between Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live should get most everyone going this week. So I want to thank everyone for joining today. Definitely check out our Facebook group. I'd love to answer any questions I can, and of course, answering each other's questions. Be sure that you're not stressing out over making this feed perfect this week. And whatever you do this week, make sure your pastor knows, if you're not the pastor, that what you're doing this week isn't necessarily what's good for every week. Sometimes it's okay just to do what you can. Sometimes it's good to wait until you can do something with excellence. And while you can do excellence with almost no resources or with missing parts, I think the barrier for what you're doing today is more going to be on the ability to buy equipment or to hook it up in time. So I just want to encourage everyone, thank everyone for being able to configure their systems this weekend, to tear out a bunch of stuff from their house, from their kids' gaming rig, whatever it is, to be able to make a broadcast happen, keep people safe, let people be able to get into the Word. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm going to have this stream up on our website and on YouTube, so you can share it out if someone else needs to hear it, or if you need to reference anything. I know I kind of go fast. I talk technical things a lot of times, so hopefully you can go back and either look things up or clarify by watching again. Anyways, I want to thank everyone for joining. It's been a fun time to hang out with y'all, and let's just pray real quick. Lord, I thank you for an opportunity to serve the body of Christ. I thank you for all the computers, all the silicon that's going to be involved this week to keep people safe, to bring the word to people. And I pray, Lord, that you would just protect the body of Christ as we witness and help the community and those in need. Help us to be able to show that we don't have to have fear, but that we can have faith and that we can trust in you because we know you hold the world. We thank you for this opportunity to meet together, and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.